I've been training consistently for the past 10 years, but I would be lying if I said having kids doesn't throw an added barrier into the journey, because it absolutely does. But now that I'm a man in the arena, so to speak, I can say from experience that it isn't a legitimate excuse to get lazy with your diet or to start skipping workouts altogether. What I will say is that it's taught me two valuable lessons to keep in mind, and this applies whether you have kids or not. The first point is to focus on what's important. What do you really want out of this journey? What is the absolute must-have that you need to achieve? Earlier on in my training journey, I would set a lot of goals for myself in a given year. I would train handstands, front levers, planches, and handstand push-ups, all while training more traditional movements to gain as much muscle as possible. Those were all important to me, and you could easily argue I would have made more progress with my calisthenics skills if I'd focused exclusively on that. But that's just not how I wanted to train. I wanted to get pretty good at the skills while building muscle mass, and my approach allowed me to balance the two, make good progress with both, and most importantly, stay consistent with my training. But now with kids, time is a limiting factor, and this has forced me to take a step back and ask, if I had to cut something, what would it be? For me, that's the calisthenics skills. They're nice to be able to do, and they were fun while I trained them, but at this point in my life, the juice just simply isn't worth the squeeze. It's highly specific training towards specific skills that just don't give me a huge return on my investment. But general strength training, whether that's with calisthenics, kettlebells, barbells, does give me a giant return on my investment. It makes me stronger, it helps me maintain my physique, it's great for reducing my risk of chronic disease, it lowers my risk of injury, and most importantly, it helps me stay functional as I age. I can get all of that much easier than I can when I'm trying to develop and maintain my calisthenic skills at the same time. And that brings me to the second point, which is minimum viable fitness or minimum effective dose. What is the minimum amount of work I need to do to achieve my true goals when I'm limited on time and don't have 2 to 3 hours a day to train like I did before I had kids? Sticking to basic lifts is my answer, and my preference is to do that primarily with calisthenics and kettlebells. Compound lifts, weighted body weight exercises, kettlebell complexes, and a bit of dedicated cardio allows me to simplify my workouts, spend less time in the gym, and still make progress, both in terms of general health as well as physical aesthetics. And I'll admit, a part of me struggled with this early on because of how much I used to do and how much time I used to spend dedicated to my training. Cutting my gym time in half felt like throwing in the towel. Now, some of you internet keyboard warriors will say that I am, but I would argue how much of that time was spent on nice-to-haves rather than must-haves. Now that I'm nearly 3 years into being a parent, I can safely say I spent quite a lot of time on the nice-to-haves. It's one of those reality checks you can only really make once you're forced to make it, and I pushed back against it myself for a while. But when I was leaving training sessions feeling burnt out or just unsatisfied with my performance, it really forced me to take a step back and reevaluate what I was doing and why I was doing it. And it was only then I realized I was continuing to train calisthenics skills for the sole purpose of maintaining them, not because I enjoyed training them or wanted to continue progressing with the skills. Now, I'm not saying dial back your goals and be less ambitious. In fact, I'm saying the exact opposite. Focus on the 1 or 2 things that are absolute non-negotiables and attack that with everything you've got. If your list of goals has 10 items on it like mine used to have, odds are it has a mix of both must-haves and nice-to-haves. If you're able to stay consistent doing that, then by all means go for it. But if you're like me and you're in a different stage in life, or you find maintaining consistency to be difficult, it might be worth reevaluating your goals. Take some time, ask yourself what's really important, and trim down that list as much as you can to allow yourself to get the most bang for your buck with the limited time you have. I'll argue your training will be more enjoyable, more sustainable, and more effective when you reestablish your focus on what this journey is really all about. As I say, your training should fit your life, not fight it. And if you're looking to train like I am with this minimum viable fitness approach, I'd recommend joining my Discord channel. The link is in the description.